So I start off all of my appointments with a full consultation, no matter how many times that my guest has been in my chair before. And even if they're saying they want the exact same thing, we always do a consultation. We look at pictures. They show me what they like, what they don't like. In this particular picture, she's showing me a picture that she had taken with her kids that the extension kind of looked like an extension. So we were discussing color and blend and that kind of stuff. So just make sure you never skip that step, no matter how much or how many times that client has been in your chair. They deserve a consultation every single time. So now I am going ahead and removing the weft. She gets a 1-row install, so she just gets it for fullness, and we add a little bit of length with this, but her hair isn't too much shorter than this. You'll see it once I pull it out. A lot of times with a 1-row install, you're keeping it fairly similar to the client's natural hair. In this case, we were able to leave it a little longer, and then over the length and the life of the hair, we usually will cut it as it thins out, or just extensions naturally shed, and so we just kind of adjust it each time. And you'll see how I adjust it at the end after I reinstall the hair. I always make sure I blend it and check it and see how it's all laying. So I'm going ahead and removing the weft now, and you can see that the way I install and do my hair extensions, I'm able to keep the weft all together. There's 4 wefts total, all sewn together, so I'm able to keep them together until I wash them, dry them, and then I'll cut them apart later. Make sure you go through and gently brush out any buildup that happens around the beads. It's going to happen every single time. Even if they use the best of the best products, there's just going to be a little bit of buildup of natural oils, products, mixed in with the hair that wasn't able to shed. And so going through and brushing it for them, it just feels really good and also breaks up any of that buildup. And then I start all of my reinstalls, unless they're getting color on their scalp. I start all of my move-ups with a nice scalp massage, a nice brushing, and a really relaxing shampoo and deep conditioner with a hot towel. So try to make it a very luxury, relaxing service when they come in, especially because they've had those extensions in their head for, usually anywhere from 7 to 8 weeks, 6 to 8 weeks. And so it just feels really good for them to have their scalp massage and their hair brushed all the way down to the scalp. They love this, so definitely don't skimp on this when your guest comes in for their move up. And now it's time for the shampoo. All right, we're back, and I'm going to go ahead and get her sectioned out. And you'll notice that my sectioning, when I'm doing even a 1-row or a 2-row install, I do not go very diagonal on the sectioning. It's at a slight diagonal, definitely. It kind of dips towards the occipital bone a little bit, but for the most part, it's fairly horizontal. And the reason why is because I found if I dip and do too much of a diagonal, as that hair grows and the weft kind of pulls, gravity, pulls on that weft a little bit. I feel like when it's very diagonal, the wefts fall towards the back, putting a little bit of strain and pull on those front the front hairs on either side of the head. And so I find that if I keep it a little more horizontal, as it grows out, the pull and the tension from the grow out of those wefts puts more of an even tension around all the sectioning rather than just at the front. So, the hair at the front of the head or the sides above the temple, it's fragile anyway. And the last thing I want to do is put too much tension or pull on that hair. So keeping your sectioning a little more horizontal is going to help with that a lot. So once I have it all nice and sectioned away, I get a liquid hairspray and I go through with an updo brush. In this case, I think it's a backcombing brush, just to get it nice and smooth. And I pin everything up into a little bun on the top of her head. So now I'm going to go in and section out the hair that I will be beading. And so I'm doing sectioning away the hair at the front where I don't want it to end up in the beads. And then once that's pinned away, with flat clips on either side. And I'm going to go through and section out the hair that I'm actually going to bead. And so I do that by sectioning all the way around, and then I pin the hair underneath so that as I go to sew, I'm not accidentally sewing those hairs into the weft. And you'll see what I mean in a second here. I apologize that a lot of these shots are just of my back. I pretty much just had my camera on a tripod, and so I try to make sure I moved out of the way, but you know, I'm also doing a client that's deserves my full attention and not me leaving constantly to refocus my camera. So I did the best I could, and hopefully you can figure out what I'm doing when my back's in the way. Okay, so I have the pieces clipped up, and now I'm going to hairspray and clip away the hair underneath. And you can see now I let down that row, and that's what I will be beading. So this really helps me keep my work nice and clean and organized, and not accidentally getting hairs into my beading or into my sewing that I don't want to be in there. So I'm going to now bead on either side. And so I do not like to start at one side and bead all the way to the other side. I like to do 3 to 4 beads on one side and then switch to the other side and do 3 to 4 beads. And then I like to end my beading in the back. And that has worked really well for me to make sure that the two front sections are either even or beaded to the width that their hair needs, because sometimes one side's thinner than the other. And I found when I worked from just left to right, sometimes I wouldn't end up with a sectioning that was right for that particular client's hairline, or front part of their hair. And so going back and forth like this has allowed me to really customize those front beads, and it's helped a lot. And by now you're probably questioning, is her hair wet while I'm beading? It is. I did not blow dry her hair first. I went straight to sectioning, and by the time I get to beading, the hair's just slightly damp. So it's not soaking wet, it's not dripping wet. You could absolutely dry the hair first before you bead, but I find that I usually end up having to wet down the hair anyway to make sure that I get the flyaways and that the hair is sleek. So just going straight from the shampoo, sectioning everything out, sectioning out the row that I want to bead. By the time I get there, it's at the perfect dampness, and it works really great. So I encourage you to give it a try. I haven't had any issues. There's been no breakage. I know people will say, well, the hair is more fragile when it's wet, but it's not that wet, and I haven't had any issues. So you can see that I've clipped away the beads so that I can start pinning the hair. So now I am going to cut these wefts. So these wefts have still been sewn together from her last install this whole time. So I've been able to wash them, deep condition them, blow dry them, do everything, and now I'm taking off the stitching. So now I'm going to start placing those wefts. So this is the bottom of the row, and so I'm going to use a lot of clips and make sure that those wefts are really secure. And you'll notice that the weft comes up over in front of the section by probably maybe even close to 3 inches, and that's because I like to fold my bottom row over the top wefts. So basically my wefts are in 2 rows. I have the wefts underneath and the beads and the natural hair, and then I have 2 more wefts set on top of that. So I'm clipping down all of the hair that's in the beads to keep that out of my way and nice and sleek. So all of her hair is now clipped, and now I'm going to lay the 2 top wefts. So I am not afraid to use a million clips if I need to. I'll move them out of the way as I work. I know some stylists try to use as few clips as they can. I just want that hair secure. I want it to be nice and clean. And so if I have to use 500 clips, then I'm fine with that. So you can see that that weft is up over the section, and as I get started, you'll notice that I fold it over and then I start sewing. And it's really hard to tell in this part of the video, but I'm doing my first tie off, and I knot the hair 4 times. I have a specific way that I like to do my first stitch, or that anchor stitch. And I do have an example of it on my TikTok channel. So if you follow me on TikTok, you can see a close-up of me doing these knots. But they are wonderful, and I've never had my first beads slip, or my knots, or my stitching come untied once I started doing this this type of beginning knot. And now I'm working my way around the head, and I use a cotton thread, but it's not a hair extension cotton thread. The cotton thread that I like to use is a quilting cotton. Quilting cotton is much thinner than the extension thread, and it comes in a variety of colors, so I can color match really well. I love the way it feels. I love the way it works. It doesn't get tangled or frayed or anything like that. Quilting cotton does have a, it's almost like a really fine coating on it. And so that's why it stays nice and slick and doesn't fray as I'm working. So it's not like, it doesn't twist up on itself or anything like that, like typical cotton will. And it's just worked really great for me. I definitely would encourage you to try branching out on the threads you're using. There's so many great threads to try. And this one's just great. It doesn't slip. It anchors in really nicely, and it's pretty much seamless. You really can't see it once I'm done. And you could barely see it even in this video as I'm stitching. It's really hard to see the thread, so it's really nice. Make sure as you're stitching that you keep that needle parallel to the hair. If you come in on your sectioning as you're stitching at a diagonal, you're going to create breaks in that weft hair. So you're going to see basically like splits all the way around. So if you don't want to see those splits, make sure that when you put that needle in, that needle is coming in parallel to the way the hair is laying, or completely perpendicular to the weft, I guess it's the stitching of the weft, the base of the weft. So whatever works for you to remember that, but just make sure you're not going in at a diagonal to your section, and you'll end up with a much more seamless weft when you're done. And also be really careful of any flyaway hairs, or any hairs from the wefts itself getting caught up in there. Make sure you keep that nice and clean. You can use a comb, you can use your fingers, or you could even use a needle to make sure you're getting any little flyaways that are wanting to get tangled up in there. It's going to happen, but just, you want to have a lot of attention to detail in this, because one little hair getting caught can really hurt your client, and there's no way that they can go, weeks with random little hairs being pulled. And so definitely taking that extra time when you're sectioning, when you're pinning everything away, and when you're stitching is going to make all the difference in this being a luxury service for your guest. You're going to see here in a minute that I start tying off. So I've worked my way up to the front of her weft. I really like to anchor down those 2 front pieces, but you have to do it in a way that has as few stitches as you can, just because if it gets bulky right there, it's going to pull, it's going to hurt them, and it can cause damage on the hair. So you don't want to do a ton of stitches, but you also want to do enough that anchors down the front of that weft so they don't have a flap there. So when I'm done stitching, I tie off like similar to hand sewing. And so if you're familiar with hand stitching or hand sewing, that is how I end my row, and it anchors it really well. And I've never had any of those stitches come loose. And so I definitely encourage you to try different stitching as you're working and different knots to anchor those wefts in. And so now I have let it down. Make sure when you get done with your row that you pull it up. You saw me lift up the whole thing, and I was checking to see if I had dipped my needle too far and accidentally sewn up some of the hair from underneath, which in this case I didn't, so you didn't see me have to correct anything. But if you pull that row up and you see that your needle dipped down a little bit further and actually stitched in some of the hair from underneath, just take a rat tail comb and gently pull those hairs out that don't belong in your stitching. And you want to be careful not to dip down and do that too much, because if you have a lot of hair that doesn't belong there and you go to pull it out, it's going to loosen your stitching because you stitched around all that hair. So once that's gone, now you have some loose stitches. So be really gentle and careful as you're putting that needle in there. And that's another reason why I like to really slick down that hair that's underneath the section. So now obviously I am styling it, and you can see that the color really comes together. Sometimes when it's all pinned up and the light's hitting it, it looks really like it doesn't match her hair, but you can see that it matches great. And I assess that each time as well. If they need it colored, we will definitely color it. In this case, we did not color it today. We decided to do just a shampoo and conditioner on it, and I talked to her in the consultation and let her know that if it's not working for her, to let me know. I always guarantee my work. I want my clients to let me know if there's something that's not working, and they can call me and I'll get them back in, but that we would color it the next time if it ended up looking like it faded and didn't match her hair anymore. So we just assess it every time, and I always keep really open communication with my clients so that they feel comfortable to tell me when something isn't working for them. I think that's the most important thing in building your clientele, is for them to feel comfortable to say, yes, this worked, or no, this didn't work, and to also call you if there's something that's really bothering them. We don't want them to be hating their hair for 8 weeks, 12 weeks, or however long it takes them before they come back in, even if it's a color or a haircut. We want to guarantee our work and have them come in within a week or two to have it fixed. And you will have a much more loyal clientele if they feel comfortable to do that with you. Now, in this particular visit, we decided to layer a little bit more just to make sure it blends really well. Her hair is getting a little bit wavy, and so most of the time she wears it curly, so she doesn't really have to worry about it blending when it's straight like this, because she pretty much never wears it like that. But in case she wanted to, I want to make sure it blends really well for her and that she doesn't have to put a bunch of extra time styling it. If I can add some layers and some softness to it, I definitely want to do that. So I'm basically trying to match to her hair, give her some extra face framing, and just make it look a lot more seamless. And then I'll go into curling it for her. And usually with her hair, we just know that it's just gonna do what it's gonna do because I deep condition it, which makes it really, really soft. And so I still curl it and I'll put some hairspray in it, but it doesn't really want to cooperate with me a whole lot after putting the deep conditioner in it. But her hair loves that deep conditioner, so we do it anyway, and she just deals with a hair that doesn't want to curl for a couple days, so totally worth it. So I love the way this one row install came out. I definitely encourage you to talk some of your guests into a one row install if they feel like their hair is fine or flat or anything like that. Even if they're not looking for length, one row of even maybe 3 or 4 wefts can just add so much to their style. It gives them just so much fullness, and it's a really great way to transform a client's hair. So if you want to see more about the way I would price something like this, you can visit my website at heathermogulhair.com. That's Heather Mogul, Mogel, hair.com, and I have sample pricing on there. So if a client's looking to get their hair done, they can see how I would price this out. And so this is just a move up. She got her hair. I think this is the 3rd install. This hair will last between 9 months and a year, and it's staying, like, it's in great shape. So I hope you enjoy this. I forgot to take after pictures when I was done, but I really just wanted to show you a whole install, start to finish, or a whole move up start to finish. And if you have any questions, make sure you drop them in the comments, and thanks for watching.